Folks, let's just get this over with. Fans and critics went into this with high expectations. After the masterful job that Sam Raimi did with the first two, it was predicted that a third would do well. Yeah, about that. You see where this is going? Mind you, it's not to say that everything about the sequel was bad, as there are aspects that it does well. Like Peter finally being appreciated as Spider-Man after so many years of oppression from the press. Well, more so Jameson specifically. It did go to his head, as Peter seems to negate Mary Jane's troubles from being cut from Broadway. However, given that this is the first time ever that he's been appreciated by the city and given the key to said city, I think anyone would feel overwhelmed by the adulation and respect he was receiving. And let's be fair, it was a long time coming. The movie stays very faithful to the black symbiote suit storyline, with Peter's personality being altered to be more aggressive and being more carefree with his words and actions and not giving any consideration for them.
Give me rent.
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
Then of course there's the church tower scene. Same way he's gotten rid of the symbiote before in previous continuities with sonic vibrations. This also happened in the 90s animated series, which also featured this scene of voice acting of the highest caliber.
Get back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
Do you want some salad with that ham? This then of course leads into the rushed Venom arc. In all honesty, this is where the movie should have stopped and then have the Venom story pick up in Spider-Man 4. Venom is not a character that you can simply shoehorn into the last act. He's a beloved, iconic character that needs a lengthy feature just to do him justice. It took 9 years later to produce his own standalone movie to give him better treatment. You really feel sympathy for what Flint Marko has gone through in that he turned to crime in order to raise funds to help his sick daughter. Because you have to keep in mind, America does not have a healthcare system like other countries where it's paid for by taxes. In America, you have to have health insurance, or you can't get healthcare. The majority of the movie paints Sandman as a heel until you hear right at the end when Marko explains to Parker what really happened on that fateful night when he lost his uncle. It was simply inadvertent. The gun was in his hand, his partner startled him, and the gun went off. Marko had no intention of killing Ben Parker that night. He only wanted his car. As Marko explains, he lives every day, wishing he could take back what he took from Peter. All that mattered to him was curing his daughter. And this movie has the best material in the trilogy for Harry Osborn. What had been building up since the end of the first movie comes to a head where Harry goes right after Peter, having acquired the same strength and capabilities that his father had as the Goblin, but minus the insanity. I found this to be a plot hole, as that was the side effect of the gas from the first movie. So why Harry didn't go crazy remains to be seen, as he was motivated by revenge and not insanity. The way he finds out I just found to be a little on the lazy side, as it's Bernard the butler that confesses to Harry that he cleaned his father's wound the night he died and told him that the injury happened by killing himself via his glider. I felt the movie was a little more balanced when Harry redeemed himself by coming to Peter's aid when he was being pounded by Sandman and Venom. Plus, this has to be one of the most amusing sound bites. Because let's face it, there were too many heels in this movie, which is something that 97's Batman and Robin also suffered from. You have so many subplots going on with Harry's amnesia, then resuming his revenge arc when he regains his memory, Sandman trying to steal money for his daughter's medicine, Brock trying to push Parker out the Bugle, and then goes after him when he clears himself courtesy of Brock's fake photo of him, Mary Jane and Peter's strained relationship, Peter dealing with the dark suit and then going after his uncle's killer. Basically, it's 3 movies in one. And then there's this scene. It's 15 years and the pain is still real. I get the point that the suit is making Parker act out what he thinks is cool, but it's so cringy that it's something that became infamous for many years after this flick. It's been referred to as the evil Peter dance, the spider swagger, and that scene.
Talk about being out of character.
In short, the writing has aspects that work for the story, but there are so many rushed elements with not enough time for them to breathe that they should have been saved for a potential sequel. I think this is equal to the performance he gave in Spider-Man 2, only from the perspective he's essentially playing two versions of Peter. When he's Spidey, he's just Peter with the mask on, but with the black suit he becomes a whole different animal in personality where he doesn't care about the consequences, morals, or stepping on people's toes. He does the dark side of Peter brilliantly. Would have been interesting to see what he could have done with Spider-Man 4. JK is the comic relief once again. I find it amusing that he's being made to take meds for his blood pressure, as fans will know of his explosive temper in the comics and subsequent animated series that he's not known for being quiet. So, to see him go against his normal character traits was interesting and amusing. Also, the look on his face when Parker sits in his seat with his feet on his desk when he demands more money is priceless, which is reflected by Betty's face outside his office. By far, his best performance in the series. Franco gives a great range of anger, vengeance, playfulness, remorse, and relief. You see throughout the movie from trying to kill Peter for still believing he killed his father, to his carefree nature due to his amnesia, resuming his vengeance when his memory returns, and to the sheer look of relief that he made it in time to the fight after learning the truth.
And he handled Harry's death scene like a champ.
Rosemary is literally only in 3 scenes. Peter declaring he'll ask MJ to marry him, meeting him at his apartment, and being present at Harry's funeral with no dialogue. For what little she's given, she makes the most of it and giving quite possibly one of the most comforting and motivating pieces of advice.
You start by doing the hardest thing. You forgive yourself.
She is an iconic Aunt May for a reason.
Like Franco and Maguire, Church gives a great performance. He portrays a man with a past that only wants to do right by his daughter. Ask yourself this: if your daughter was dying, what would you be willing to do to save her life? Thomas gives Marco a stoic quality of speaking very little and talking with this low, stoic tone, and he really sells the emotion of the character with his eyes. In the aftermath of the battle with Venom, you can see the remorse in his eyes when he speaks of what he regretfully did to Peter by taking his uncle. With a simple reply from Spidey,
I forgive you.
Sandman's arc was given closure as he had been redeemed.
This was arguably one of the best redemption arcs, and Thomas played it to perfection.
Long before she was managing Jurassic World, she once played the first live-action Gwen Stacy, and to this day the only one to live. Like Rosemary, she makes use of what little she has in this, and she makes Gwen come across as friendly, perky, and bubbly.
Oh, good lord, where do I start?
I think we may have found someone that makes John Cryer's Alan from 2.5 Men look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. When I think Eddie Brock, I think of the Hank Azaria portrayal in the 90s animated series as a muscle-bound meathead that hits before thinking with the build of Brock Lesnar.
Folks, don't get any ideas. No one needs to see that.
The way that Topher portrays Brock is just nothing like the character that people grew up on in the comics and other media. Also, the whole Brock, Edward Brock Jr. got old real fast. I think it was just the way that Topher just acted like this smooth-talking big shot just annoyed the fans and really did nothing for the story. Had this incarnation been given a different name, I don't think the animosity would have been so strong. Needless to say that this movie killed his film career.
With performances like that, are you really surprised?
The only time in this movie where she sells anything is Harry's death scene. The rest of the movie, she is just flat, no conviction, and if she was purposely trying to make Mary Jane insufferable on purpose, then she succeeded. Even when Peter is trying to console her when she gets cut, she stops him. Even when he's trying to encourage her to get back on the horse as a means of not giving up, it's like she doesn't want to be cheered up.
Most girls I know appreciate being lifted up after disappointment. I guess Mary Jane is just a different breed. Agreed, Madam President, agreed.
In short, her worst performance as the character, and I do not miss this version of Mary Jane Watson. This series has not been best remembered for its use of effects.
That. And then... that just looks horrible.
This time, however, they got the visual effects right. When you see Spidey doing moves that Tobey would not be physically able to do and therefore place in a digital Spider-Man, the VFX progressed to the point where the eye could be better deceived.
The same could be said for Sandman when he turned into this giant sand creature that basically screamed, "I can't believe we're not ripping off the '99 Mummy movie."
I think if the movie had not gone to the painstaking detail of the CG for Sandman, then it's possible that the movie could have come out in 2006. Today, they probably would have had an easier time with this, but back then, it took longer. It's a little hit and miss for Venom CG. There are points where it looks passable, and other times it just looks too cartoony. His meeting with Sandman is fine until he starts talking with his face concealed.
Long story short, the effects have gotten better, but some areas needed more polishing. For all the problems that this movie has with the writing, the score shines effortlessly.
It's not uncommon to use a character's movie theme within a movie. If you look back at the Superman series from 1 to Returns, the iconic John Williams theme is used when Supes is triumphant, and to when Bat is readying himself to go after Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins. The use of the theme when Harry comes to Peter's aid in the final battle of the movie really added a sense of hope for Peter. After having his hide handed to him, here comes an unlikely ally, knowing the truth and willing to die for his friends, as he said about the start of the movie, which then leads into his death, as the string instruments make you feel the emotional weight of this character now passing into the next world after giving his final words to his friends.
You know, I give Kirsten a lot of fault in this movie, but I could not fault her talent as a singer because the jazz song she begins performing at the end just shows that she has it as a vocalist.
Lord, I've locked my heart, I'll keep my feelings there. I have stocked my heart with icy frigidaire, and I mean...
In that same scene, one of the most beautiful pieces is played to no dialogue between Peter and Mary Jane of their reconciliation and the rekindling of their relationship. It's such a tender and touching moment that what dialogue could you put in that would add to it? Spider-Man 3 grossed a profit of $894.9 million on a $258 to $350 million budget, making it the third highest grossing film that year. 15 years later, that would be worth $1.2 billion. The movie had mixed to negative reviews, the main faults being too many villains and subplots. David Adelstein of New York Magazine misses the centrifugal threat of Alfred Molina's character, adding that the 3 villains here don't add up to one Doc Ock. Roger Ebert, who had praised Spider-Man 2, gave the sequel 2 out of 4 stars and thought Church never expressed how Sandman felt about his new powers, something Molina as Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2 did with a vengeance. He said the film was a mess, with too many villains, subplots, romantic misunderstandings, conversations, and street crowds looking high into the air and shouting, "Ooh, this way," then swiveling and shouting, "Ah, that way." In a 2014 interview, Raimi called the film awful, with Avi Arad in 2018 accepting blame for pushing Venom to be included.
Well, better late than never.
Despite the negative reviews, the movie would gain popularity on social media for the meme popularity of Bully Maguire that was based on Parker's corrupt persona courtesy of the symbiote suit. This is most evident in Aldo Jones' weird trailer for Infinity War when Maguire pulls Holland's Spider-Man off a spaceship's surface. The character strutting the streets during the film's climactic montage scene was used as an option content on Destiny 2. There were plans to do Spider-Man 4, 5, and 6, in which one of those sequels would have featured Dylan Baker's transformation into the Lizard, a character that was teased back in Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 4 would have seen John Malkovich as the Vulture, with Anne Hathaway playing Felicia as the Vultress and not Black Cat.
I couldn't have seen that working. That'd be like Bruce Banner being Spider-Man. Oh wait, that actually happened in the comics with Peter Parker being the Hulk.
Jokes aside, it's best not to tamper with what works.
Well, if people obeyed that principle, Feegbusters wouldn't exist.
The series was cancelled, and Sony pressed forward with the first of 2 reboots. First up was the Mark Webb directed movie 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man, with British-American actor Andrew Garfield replacing Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Despite feeling like a rehash of the first movie 10 years prior, the movie did reasonably well, with people praising Garfield's performance along with his love interest, Gwen Stacy, played by Emma Stone. A sequel followed in 2014 with The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that was panned by fans and critics, with some going so far to say that this was worse than Spider-Man 3.
If someone had told me that before 2014, I'd have said they were nuts.
After a fallout between Garfield and Sony, Spidey was rebooted for the second time, with British actor Tom Holland taking up the mantle of Spider-Man in Captain America 3: Civil War.
Well, dependent on whom you speak to, the movie has been enjoyed on DVD and Blu-ray and 4K since 2007. I'm MJ Knight, and this was Spider-Man 3.